Hello all. Let me just start saying that I am humbled and honored to be part of this group of high achieving women today who through their actions and activities are providing the legal profession with knowledge through professionalism. To all participating today, I would like to inform you that your cameras and microphones are turned off and that for reasons of GDPR, this meeting is recorded. You can have the opportunity to send your questions in through the chat or through the session. Today's seminar is the second of a series of seminars having to do with issues of sexual harassment at the workplace and equality and inclusion, and a series of actions that the Committee of Young Lawyers of the Cyprus Bar Association in collaboration with Nicosia Bar Association have taken to address the matters. After our first seminar held in March last year regarding sexual harassment at the workplace, which was an extremely hot topic also at that time, our members were made aware of the already in place sexual conduct code and the ways that the system in Cyprus takes measures to ensure safety at the workplace. Following that, the Young Lawyers Committee of the CBA went one step ahead and enforced an action plan. Recently conducted a wide survey among young lawyers, whose findings we will discuss further along today. During today's seminar, our members will have the opportunity to learn about equality issues, the evolution of modern policies here, and be informed on the way other organizations abroad have dealt with similar or identical problems, and strategies that are already established and policies that they follow. I'm extremely honored to say that setting equality and matters of inclusion top on the list of priorities of the Cyprus Bar Association have led to the drafting of the Pledge to Equality, for which I believe dear Georgia will tell us all about. Georgia, the floor is yours. But before that, once again, my gratitude to both Professor Sarah Chandler, Ms. Meret Smith, and of course, Georgia Konstantinou Panayotou for making today happen. Georgia.
Thank you, Georgia. Thank you very much for the introduction. As the president of the Committee of Young Lawyers and a board member of the CBA, I would like to welcome everyone. Thank you for participating, and thank you to our esteemed guest speakers. Meret, on one hand, from the various positions as the Secretary General of the Norwegian Bar Association, in the International Bar Association, and in the Chief Executives of European Bar Associations, is actively promoting gender equality and inclusiveness, whereas Professor Sarah Chandler actively campaigns for women in leadership in the law, for equality, diversity, and inclusiveness, and her remarkable career is devoted in working to achieve a more diverse and inclusive legal profession. Sarah, Meret, I truly believe that we have a lot to learn from your own accumulated knowledge and global practical experience on the important areas of promoting equality, inclusiveness, diversity, and non-discrimination in the legal profession. The legal profession must be diverse and inclusive. Why? Because it goes to our core philosophy as lawyers. Diversity and inclusion is first and foremost about equality, about fairness, about justice. Our system of justice, which represents one of society's most fundamental values, requires a legal profession that is contemporary in composition and has an outlook that is in sync with the society it serves. It is intolerable for the legal profession to lag behind other professions in diversity and inclusion. Other professions which require more direct focus on such values as justice, leadership, and democracy have achieved diversity and inclusion. Lawyers, we are a profession of leaders and problem solvers who are on the front line protecting, preserving, and promulgating equality and fairness. That we are unable to correct a serious deficiency in our own profession is unacceptable. The Cyprus Bar Association's intervention is necessary for real change in Cyprus because so far theory has not translated into reality. Thus, intervention and other concrete steps are necessary to be done. So we should address the reality of diversity in today's legal profession. In doing so, we should ask the tough questions. How prevalent is the view that diverse lawyers are less able to thrive in large firms, environments, or corporate practices? How innovative are law firms willing to be in order to meet their diversity and inclusion goals and objectives? Are diverse associates in law firms receiving the same quantity and quality of assignments, professional development, training and opportunities, mentoring and client contact, and exposure as other associates in their law firms? How do law firms show their commitment to diversity in practice? The Committee of Young Lawyers of the Cyprus Bar Association ran a survey last year in order to collect the data and to properly identify the problem. And we did because the young lawyers, members of our law society, responded and deposited their own perspective, their own experiences and opinions. 44% of the young lawyers participating in our survey declared that they have experienced gender discrimination at work, 51.2% thereof being women. 23.3% suffer discrimination based on societal and economic criteria. 7% suffer discrimination based on sexual orientation. And in men particularly, this percentage is higher at 13%. 12% suffer discrimination based on their political beliefs. 9% suffered a sexual harassment incident. 93% thereof never reported this incident. 42% suffered mobbing, and again, 90% thereof never reported this incident. But it is not enough to ascertain the facts. Facts should be measured and assessed. The Cyprus Bar Association is currently working on inventing and testing the methodologies that will lead to change. We are developing and presenting new strategies, like the new pledge to equality. It's an invitation to all law firms to establish and adopt pioneering practices so as to promote equality and inclusiveness and eliminate discrimination in the management and workplace of their firm. In Greek, δράση κοινής αντίληψης για την ισότητα. It was actually sent to all the law firms around Cyprus and invited them to endorse this pledge. This is done in order to build a safe and solid culture of equal opportunities and inclusiveness in the work environment. And I think it is crucial to start from our own home. We pursue new methods to educate and inspire the legal profession about diversity and inclusiveness, to promote new tactics, to establish efficient reporting mechanisms in harassment, to raise awareness, to create more opportunities and build greater diversity in the legal profession, to develop codes and practices that address sexual and other forms of unlawful harassment and discrimination, noting that such conduct will not be tolerated within the legal profession. Programs designed to improve diversity and inclusiveness have a positive effect on individual members by encouraging their full participation and by eliminating bias and discrimination. We advance policies for equality on the grounds of gender with respect to the recruitment, the retention, and the promotion of women lawyers and lawyers of other vulnerable groups. Regrettably, the history of our profession is filled with instances of discrimination and prejudice against diverse individuals. These range from discriminating in hiring, in promoting, in giving rightful opportunities. I think many, if not all of us, have experienced at least once in our careers an incident of discrimination. For me, at the beginning of my career, I have experienced a very bright trainee lawyer being put aside because of his sexual orientation in a firm where there was no culture of equality, inclusiveness, and non-discrimination. Lack of culture in the firm did not allow this bright lawyer to remain in the profession. Human nature being what it is, all of us are subject to assumptions and biases that may have little real grounding in reality, but nevertheless influence our attitudes and shapes our behaviors. And particularly when it comes to profession, this is crucially fundamental. And if we take a step back in time, becoming a lawyer presupposes an educational achievement. So those entering law school in the first place are a relatively homogeneous group. Then the pool of lawyers graduating and taking the bar will not be more diverse. So we have to take a step back and ensure that inclusiveness is also part of attending law schools. The road to eliminating discrimination, to enjoy a robust culture of promoting equality in the legal profession is long. And I invite all of you, young lawyers, employers, all the members of the legal community, the managers, the senior partners who have authority in their hands, to join us in this effort in shaping a more inclusive, more welcoming, more equal, and more fair legal profession as a pledge for the young lawyers for the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Georgia, for sharing all this information and all the actions that are taken already and are in place. We will now continue with Meret Smith. Meret has been Secretary General of the Norwegian Bar Association since 2003. She has a law degree from University of Oslo and an LLM from Georgetown University in Washington, D.C. She has experience as an associate in a corporate law firm and from the Ministry of Justice in Norway. She has been an assistant judge in Asker og Bærum District Court and a judge at Borgarting Appeal Court in Oslo. Apologies if I got the name wrong. She has been head of the board of the National Theatre in Norway. She co-chairs the Bar Executives Committee in the IBA, and she's head of the chief executives of European Bar Associations. Meret, looking forward to hearing what you have to say.
Thank you very much, and thank you for this warm welcome. I am grateful for the opportunity to talk about gender equality in the legal profession. I find the topic, of course, very important, both as a representative of the Norwegian Bar Association, but also on a personal level. In 1959, my mother graduated from law school in Norway. She was one of, I think, 3 female law students. And at my graduation, we were quite a few women, but still a minority. Today, more than 60% of Norwegian law students are female. The general increase in female law students is a tendency in many countries, and as I understand in Cyprus as well. So we have come a far way since my mother's graduation. But this development is not reflected totally in the legal profession, especially not among the partners in the large law firms. And today I will be talking about what is the problem with gender inequality in the legal profession, and why is it so important to solve the problem? That's probably an obvious question, but still, and what can we do to solve it? And as Georgia already talked about, do we have a problem of inequality in the legal profession? And the short answer is, of course, yes. This has been made clear by several recent surveys in many countries. Let me just mention that today, as we speak, we have an event in the Norwegian Bar Association presenting a new survey on unconscious bias. And of course, you have yourself the newly conducted survey among the lawyers in Cyprus, as Georgia talked about. And the tendencies are the same everywhere. Women are underrepresented in senior legal positions, including partnerships in law firms. They earn less on average, and they are more prone to discrimination and sexual harassment. In Norway, 4 out of 5 law firm partners are male. At the moment, the majority of the associates coming into the big law firms are women, but many of them leave after some years. We had a huge survey in Norway, Norwegian Bar Association, some years ago, and it showed that women usually leave the law firms after they have had their second child. In other words, the women leave the law firms in the middle on when they are in the partner track. Also, the surveys we've conducted show that in Norway, female lawyers earn on average 75% of their male colleagues. And a recent survey showed that 32% of female lawyers in Norway between 35 and 44 years, they disagree that we have equality in the workplace. So why is it important to try to solve this problem? And I mean, Georgia talked a lot about this, but equality is of course essential in a democratic society. And I think, I mean, every person who starts to work in a law firm should have the same possibilities to become a partner and to become, you know, take part in the leadership of the law firm. And furthermore, it has become increasingly clear that we must utilize all the competence we have. When women are not represented in higher positions, the legal profession misses out on important talent. And this is especially true for smaller countries like Cyprus and Norway. And of course, we also need the different perspectives that comes with diversity. And it has been found to heighten the quality of legal advice and make it more profitable when you have a diversity in the law firm. And I think also clients, they are less homogeneous than before. And they are creating an increasing demand for advisors that resembles themselves. Young female clients doesn't always want to go to the old male partner. They want to see someone who's more like themselves. And then to the most difficult questions. So how do we solve this problem? And I really think, you know, been working with this for so long that there are no quick fixes. I mean, I wish there was, but there isn't. We must rather look for the long fix solution. In a sense, I think that many changes must work together at the same time. And it's very important that the Bar Association play a part in sort of pushing these changes forward. And one important thing is to create awareness of the problem. And I really want to praise you for doing exactly that, both by conducting the wide survey you've done among the young lawyers in Cyprus, but also by hosting an event like you have today. When you, as a young lawyer, see that lack of equality is not just a feeling that a few women have, but a shared experience among the majority of lawyers, then it becomes a fact. And when something is established as a fact, there is a greater will to do something to mitigate the problem. And creating awareness is one of the tools the Norwegian Bar Association has used to combat inequality in the legal profession. And we have actually conducted quite a few different surveys among the members, both the total membership and among the young members. And I think it has really helped pushing forward to look into the problem and to establish that this is a problem and something the law firms has to do something with. And the Norwegian Bar Association has established a diversity committee. And the diversity committee has hosted several events every year focusing on equality and diversity in the law firms. They have had roundtable discussions, including the leadership from the big law firms. And the last years they've had these events not in the bar associations, but they've had them in the big law firms. So the big law firms have had to host these equality events. And I think that has been a success. And the last year they have launched a podcast, which has become quite popular. And I really enjoy listening to it. Gender equality is also a theme in the latest edition of the Norwegian Bar Association's magazine. The magazine has interviewed numerous female lawyers, some of them partners, and has focused on their views of how to increase equality in the legal profession. And the Norwegian Bar Association, we have recently had quite an extensive dialogue with the managing partners in the major and the biggest law firms. and just to create awareness, accountability, and to discuss solutions. And in my opinion, a direct and personal approach is part of the solution. And last year, a network for Norwegian female litigation lawyers was established. The network is for women working with civil procedure, where they can learn from each other across law firms and talk about common challenges. And it has really been a success. And I think it's been such a success that we think we should try to establish new networks within other fields of the law. And in addition to creating awareness within the legal system, systemic measures must be set in place sort of more on a national level. Or in my view, parental leave has been one important step for equality in the workplace. And I feel that's a tendency for lawyers to think that, well, parental leave, that's not so much for us, that's for other professions. But I think it is really important actually to talk about parental leave. And I will do this now. In Norway, we have a generous parental leave, and it includes both the mother and the father. And together, the parents get 1 year parental leave when they have with 100% salary when they have a child. And 1/3 of this year must be taken by the father. So when I had children, and I have 3 children, my husband and I, we took 6 months parental leave each. And I think this is not only important in this year when you have the parental leave, but it leaves a lasting effect on how we share the responsibility of bringing up the children when we were both back in full-time work. So I think it's very important, and I hope my husband will say the same. Julia, you have to check out on it when you meet him next time we have a meeting. And actually research shows that women who succeed in high positions, they have more shared responsibilities at home with their husband. So I think this is really, I think, you know, this is an important issue also for the Bar Association to talk about. And at least the tendency in Norway now is that male lawyers do take parental leave, although some of the old male parties think this is really strange. And young lawyers are increasingly concerned about having a good work-life balance. Okay, and another important issue is how can the sort of private sector push change? And we see, at least now, I think that many large corporations are increasingly concerned about corporate social responsibility. And we see now that some clients are concerned that when buying legal services, it is important that the law firm has a diverse group of lawyers. Diversity is profitable, both on paper and in practice. And I think clients should be encouraged to make these demands, and the Bar Association should promote diversity as a sign of quality. Also, and I think Georgia talked about this a bit, law firms must be encouraged to make sure that women rise in the ranks of the law firm. Through the policies and work culture, law firms can make sure women do not get set back too far by having maternal leave, and that they are kept on the partner track. I think it's paramount that law firms give female lawyers returning from maternal leave exciting and important cases. And I mean, of course, this is also true for all the female lawyers in a law firm. But having children does not, of course, alter your skills. And law firms must give women increased responsibilities when returning back to the law firm, so they gain confidence and spark that comes with responsibility. They must also feel, the women must also feel the excitement and adrenaline that comes from working with clients on important cases. female lawyers must not be hidden in the back office, and especially not after returning back from to law firm from parental leave. And I think that the Bar Association should encourage this. They should talk about the importance of, that women get the experience of the important clients, of the important cases, that you always have a sort of a mixed team when you work with large clients. And also, I mean, with the flexibility to work in the evenings, and if you have children, when the children have gone to bed, juggling professional and family life is not necessarily an issue of time and capacity. It is possible for both the male and the female lawyers to manage this. And I think the main point is that the law firm leadership has a responsibility to make sure that the work is rewarding for female lawyers as much as for the male lawyers. And I think last but not least, the will to change is the basis for all development. The law firm, as well as individual lawyers, must want equality, diversity, and inclusiveness. And the management of law firms must focus on young female lawyers and not just say that this is a priority. And I think that the Bar Association must push forward to encourage the will to change in law firms, so that they actually do prioritize female associates today and help them become relevant as partners in the future. So good luck with your work on equality, diversity, and inclusiveness. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Merit. Thank you for sharing the already set policies in Norway and what practices law firms are practicing there. And also, I will be looking out for the podcast that you mentioned as soon as we finish today, as we end our seminar. We will be continuing with Professor Sarah Chandler now. Sarah is a solicitor in London South Bank University's Legal Advice Clinic and was a council member in the Law Society of England and Wales, representing solicitors in the voluntary sector. She is also active in local law societies and is past president of Westminster and Holborn Law Society and past president of South London Law Society. She was chair of the Law Society of Human Rights Committee from 2011 to 15 and continues as an active member with particular responsibility for Colombia. Sarah has a background in free legal services, having worked for 15 years in law centers, 5 years in legal aid firms, 9 years in the University of Law Legal Advice Center, and joined London South Bank University in 2012. Her work in the Legal Advice Clinic involves training and supervising law students to give free legal services to members of the public. In 2016, Sarah was made honorary QC for her work in human rights, pro bono, and clinical legal education. During 2003 to 2012, Sarah worked pro bono in training programs of the Law Society of England and Wales with the legal professions of Nigeria, Uganda, Zambia, and the Eastern Caribbean on access to justice, promoting legal aid schemes and free legal services. Also, Sarah was a postgraduate student in Chile, studying land tenure and agrarian reform. When the military coup of 1973 happened, Sarah was in the UK and joined others to form a human rights committee. From 1974 to 1980, she worked in the Chilean refugee program. And from 1982 to 92, she worked with North Lewisham Law Center as a welfare rights worker in one of the poorest inner city areas of London. In 1995, she qualified as a solicitor, working in a legal aid firm assisting homeless people as a solicitor specializing in housing law. Sarah has been a member of the Human Rights Commission of the Federation of European Bars since 2006. And in 2011, she became president of the Human Rights Commission until 2015, when she joined the FBE presidency. She remains an active member and is currently the secretary to the Commission. In 2017, she became the first female president of the European Bars Federation. Sarah is a member of the Law Society's Women in Law core group and campaigns for women in leadership in the law. Since 2018, she has been the chair Law Society's Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Committee and is working to achieve a more diverse and inclusive legal profession. Sarah, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. That is really very kind welcome. And I also thank you all for your invitation. It's a pleasure to get to know you, even though this is virtual, remote event, but I hope that we will meet in person very soon. So I'm going to introduce to you a few pointers from the Law Society of England and Wales. And we will look at the structure of equality, diversity and inclusion, our vision, our strategy, our mechanisms, the Women in Law Pledge, and the gender pay gap. So next slide, here we are. We have a committee of the Law Society Council for Equality, Diversity and Inclusion, and it is made up of council members, five division representatives, and members of the profession. And the 5 divisions represent those with protected characteristics under the Equality Act 2010. So that's ethnic minority lawyers, junior lawyers, lawyers with disabilities, LGBT plus lawyers, and women lawyers division. And if we look at the next slide, you'll see that the Equality Act has 9 protected characteristics, which I'm sure you are all very familiar with. So looking at the vision of the Law Society on the next slide, we are committed to creating a more modern, diverse and inclusive profession. We want everyone to have the opportunity to join and succeed in the legal profession, no matter who they are and from what background they come. The legal profession must reflect our society, the society we serve, and the profession knows how important this is to ensuring future success and maintaining trust in justice. But it also knows progress is mixed and there is much more to do. So looking at the next slide, which is our strategy, we have it integrated into our Law Society business plan as one of our 6 priorities. And in working towards our vision, we do the following. We inform by carrying out research like you have, surveying the profession. We share the data and insights on diversity and inclusion in the profession. We guide and convene, setting out expectations and providing guidance on good practice. And we regularly convene firms and organizations to maintain momentum and to continue to share experience and learn what works. We support and engage individuals in marginalized groups through our division networks. We have visible role models and targeted programs, one of which is a scholarship scheme for the fees to qualify as a solicitor for people who have not had a doorway into the profession, who may be the first member of their family to go to university and have faced barriers to qualifying. We also engage with individuals across the whole profession to build awareness and change behavior. We also support and engage in as many ways as we can, asking, for example, junior lawyers what it is that we can help with. We also advocate and influence using external influence and representative voice to advocate for policy change. So this will be with government and other authorities. and to advance diversity in the profession collaboratively with other branches of the legal profession. So we do so within legal services and the rule of law. And we lead by example, demonstrating good practice ourselves as an employer and professional membership body. So our next slide shows the mechanisms, and here I've put up on screen, and it's going to go in the chat, all of our reports that are based on evidence of our surveys. And the top one, of course, is Women in Law. And I hope that you will be able to read those reports, because there are a lot of recommendations, a lot of ideas of what works well. And there are toolkits there, which are practical support. And that's the same for lawyers with disabilities, our report Legally Disabled 2020, and also next one, Race for Inclusion, another report, Pride in the Law. And from the Junior Lawyers Division, we've published their work on a survey of junior lawyers on well-being in the workplace, giving guidance for best practice. Now, if we look at the next slide, we have here, it's because of the period of since the pandemic, when we've not been able to meet in person, we've been possible to organize many more discussions and roundtables using virtual platforms. And since June 2020, we've organized roundtables with all sectors of the profession, from large firms to in-house, medium and small firms, as well as local law society and our divisions. And these roundtables are facilitated by the president of the Law Society and members of our EDI staff team at the Law Society. And we have a title for the roundtables, which is Achieving Change Together, or ACT, which we think works really well. Using these roundtables enables, like today, participants can talk about their experience in seeking employment, progression in their law firms, and where they've achieved leadership in a secure and comfortable environment. Typically, participants range, we have about 10 to 12, and it gives space for discussion. Can be more, but it's a smaller group. And we invite a small panel of speakers to join the president. And it shows that there is shared experience in recruitment, retention, and progression. Often bad experience have been shared, but they're not always negative. And in some cases, there's good experience to share as well. And a key starting point is the examination of recruitment policies. Too often, recruiters are unlikely to seek candidates from non-traditional backgrounds. Once recruited, an employee might be the only person in the firm who's different, because recruiters tend to recruit people like us, in inverted commas. And people could be different by gender, race, disability, or sexuality, and experience isolation if their organizations have not focused on building an inclusive culture. So more employers, most new qualified enter the profession with little equality of influence and thus little possibility of change. Women reported there's still barriers to employment where bias, whether conscious or unconscious, exists, and assumptions about maternity are still too apparent in interview questions. Cultures in the workplace usually mirror the dominant culture in society, and legislation on equality and non-discrimination is an important factor, giving us all legal rights, but at the same time, changing the culture of the firm is vital. So let's look at slide number 8, which has some of the examples that were shared. So first of all, of course, understanding and combating unconscious bias, then looking at the recruitment policies and practice and with recommendations for change, reverse mentoring has been a really good mechanism because this enables leadership of firms and organizations to gain insights into the career journeys of women and members from non-traditional backgrounds. So a newly qualified young woman could be mentoring a senior member of the firm, a male partner, for example. So this reverse of the normal coaching or mentoring relationship is really important. And flexible working, in that report that's in the links, there's 17 recommendations on different ways of implementing flexible working. And as Mariette has already talked about, paternity and maternity leave is vital. Fair distribution of work as well, and meetings to be held at convenient times for all, and women supporting other women in the workplace is also really important, and zero tolerance of sexual harassment. We must change the culture at work, and then there should be no tolerance of sexist remarks and jokes. On to the next slide. There's some further examples here. For example, encouraging male leaders to take action, to address gender equality themselves, and for example, to refuse to participate in all male panels, and to actively engage with men to get them on board, taking responsibility and accountability as agents of gender equality in the businesses, and review work practices with the leadership team, and then to ensure that equal numbers of both male and female candidates are considered for all significant opportunities, and to monitor success rates on recruitment progression and work allocation and access to training. We should always source female colleagues and peers for participating. So that's not just us women sourcing them, the men have got to do this as well in what could otherwise be non-inclusive panels or conferences or board meetings. And we should raise awareness across all staff groups of bias and its impact on decision-making. So not just the legal members of the firm, the lawyers in the firm, but everybody. And to ensure that the task is revisited regularly, ensuring it becomes routine in workforce planning. Then we should actively counter unfair negative presumptions and low expectations which are expressed or inferred about colleagues on account of their gender or other characteristics. And we should also ensure that victims and witnesses of sexual harassment are able to speak up. And training on this issue should be made available to everyone. Then on the next slide, we've got some more examples. So having one named member of senior leadership team or management committee who's accountable for gender diversity and inclusion is a really important focus for the firm. And that person is a champion and ensure that it happens, setting specific gender targets at leadership level and other levels as appropriate, and considering differential outcomes for different groups of women at all levels of the organization, taking into account background, identity, and range of experiences, and developing an action plan to achieve gender equality in our senior management and leadership teams, and committing at senior level to tackle discrimination, bullying, and sexual harassment, and committing to tackle workplace culture. As you know, I keep mentioning this, but that is where you're going to get real change, and making public our pledge. And you also have told us about your pledge, and we should publish our targets and action plan for firms, so it's quite transparent about how they're doing. And it's also a good guide for when you want to know something about a firm you're going to apply for a job there, if they do make clear that they have got equality, diversity, and inclusion as part of their culture, and they publish their results. And we should ensure that specific aspects of pay, reward, and recognition of the senior leadership team are linked to delivery against gender equality targets as applicable. I'm going to go on now to the gender pay gap. We've had an Equal Pay Act since 1970, and where are we now? 30 years later, and it's only now that we're beginning to understand that you have to report what the differential is, otherwise it remains hidden. It continues to be a silent discrimination. So over the last 5 years, it's been mandatory by law for large companies. So it's only starting basically with those companies with more than 250 employees. And we've, as the Law Society, carried out our own survey of large firms of solicitors in last year. So the headline gender pay gap figures published are only crude indicators really, but they do help as a pressure for change. And it means that it could trigger organizations to do more detailed work to understand and address the specific causes of gender pay differences in their workplaces. So over 10,000 businesses and public bodies submitted their gender pay gap data covering 15th of October 2021. And across all organizations, the average gap in men and women's mean hourly pay was 14%, and in median pay, 12.6%. Now, if you compare that with law firms, search on National Pay Gap Service revealed that 42 out of the 50 large firms that submitted a gender pay gap report for April 2020, among these 42, the average gap in mean hourly pay was 20%, in other words, higher than the national average, and 32.4% on the median hourly pay, so well above. And for the majority of firms, that was not even including partner pay. So let's have a look now at whether there's any, in the next slide, you'll see any progress over time. Well, these largest law firms, 41 of the largest firms who submitted their data, there was a slight decrease in average gender pay gap based on the mean of these firms of minus 1.38. And the average gap in median pay saw an actual increase of 0.8%, so going in the wrong direction. We recognized that the pandemic had and must have had some impact on those figures, because we know that women's careers have been disproportionately affected during the pandemic. And so the National Office of Statistics shows that the national gender pay gap has widened between April 20 and 21 from 7% to 7.9%, but the long term remains downward. And in longer term, then the number of firms reporting a decrease over the 4 years, 28 of those 41 law firms saw a decrease in their gender pay gap, and 12 firms experienced an increase. So there is still, unfortunately, work there. One firm saw no change at all. So based on the median, 20 firms experienced a decrease, but half of 21 firms saw an increase of their gender pay gap, so about 10. So not so good. On to the next slide, which is the conclusion. There is much to do. We can follow in the steps of women who have achieved change and are starting to achieve change in the legal profession. So thank you very much for your attention. And I'm looking forward now to questions and discussions. And I congratulate you on your program and this event today. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah, for sharing all these practical advice and practical information that are already in place. What I took was from your presentation, besides all the examples, was the fact of the creation of good practices among the profession, and the fact that large law firms are entering and actively participating in enforcing their social corporate responsibility and taking action. I was also struck by the refusal of women to participate in the panel, which was only with men. That struck me. And the most important of all, which I think you mentioned many times, as well as Meredith did, was the creation of work culture and culture as such for appreciating and understanding basic human rights, as you have clearly explained. So thank you again. We have time now for questions, comments, and we look forward to receiving the participants' questions in the chat or through Facebook, I think. But through the chat would be a better way, probably.
Yeah, Georgia, just to give you a couple of minutes time to organize the questions, I would like to ask Sarah to elaborate a bit on the issue of reporting the gender pay gap from the law firms. This is very important in order to formulate our own policy in this respect. So as I understand, Sarah, you have actually asked the law firms to report the payment, the salaries towards both men and women in order to identify any gaps. And then what steps did you take in this respect? You are on mute. Could you unmute, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Georgia. What has happened is that we've taken the evidence from the information that's out there, because the government has published the results of the mandatory reporting. Now, where it falls down is that we now need to know about smaller firms. So we started with ourselves. The Law Society has done its own survey of our employees and looked at ourselves. And so now we will do what you're suggesting. We need to go out to all law firms and to do survey with them. We would hope they will do that, because following the example at the moment that if you're a large firm, it is mandatory, it's by law. But it's going to be a question of persuasion, as always. And as you say, the data will be really important as a way of indicating where there is a problem. And then we will say, we'll try and understand, why does that problem exist and how to overcome it?
Yeah, we have actually included this in our pledge that I announced earlier towards the law firms and the employers, but I think it's not adequate for them to endorse this pledge and undertake to apply the good practices. It's also very important to follow up and monitor in practice how this is treated. So this is important to understand as well. Meredith, I was very impressed of how the government treated the parental leave. I mean, here we talk about motherhood leave and fatherhood leave, and we discriminate between the two parents. But I was really impressed on treating this exactly the same, because this is essentially what it means to fight against discrimination, I suppose. So by differentiating and granting more leave to one gender than the other, immediately you create yourself as the state a gap and a different discriminating treatment between these two groups. So how long has it been since this approach was adopted by the government?
It's been quite a long time ago since they started to give part of the parental leave exclusively to the man. And of course, when they did so, it increased dramatically how much the men took the parental leave. But I must admit, I mean, it is still quite hot topic, to put it that way.
Controversial, yeah, I suppose so.
And I think it's still discussed, for how long should be exclusively for the man and how long should be, for the parents to share. And when we had a Labour government, it was even a larger part of the parental leave that was exclusively for the man or for the father. And then it was reduced a little bit when we had a Conservative government, and now we just changed government again. So now it's all up for discussion. But I'm just saying this to show that it's not. It has been discussed quite a bit, but I think for the young parents, it has really been important, and it has been they think it's a good rule, and I think or good law, and it has really had a dramatic effect on how much the father takes a parental leave. I mean, it really has, because if the father does not take his part of the parental leave, they don't get the money at all. So it's really, I think it's been very effective, and it's very part of sort of the women's equality movement in Norway, and that's why I took so much time talking about it, because I think I actually do think it's important, and it's not only that year when you have the parental leave, but it creates a base for sort of equalness between the couple for many years to come.
Yeah, and it definitely encaptures the very essence of full equality between genders.
I have a question that goes to both of you, I think. Do you believe that change of culture, of work culture, has happened already? And if yes, how long did that take? How long did it take for culture to change and to have different ideas?
If I should start, I mean, I think it takes time, and I agree with what Sarah was talking about, that is so important. And I think, it's in many law firms now, it's sort of lip service. They say, we promote women, we are concerned about women, but they don't do any of the steps you have to, they don't take any of the steps you have to take to actually make change. And I think, so I think it takes time, but I think when the bar sort of comes in and demands, just ask them, so what are you doing? What are the changes you're actually making? How are the women? What are the chances for the women to make a partnership? I think that has become much more a public discussion the last, I would say, 5 years. And I'm not saying that has changed the culture in every law firm, but I think the last 5 years, we've seen quite a bit of change. And and I think the public discussion on this issue, just like you are doing now, it pushes the culture change within the law firms.
Thank you.
Thank you. I absolutely agree with you, Merit, that it's slow and it's beginning, and it is in the last 5 years. We started surveying in 2017 with women, and we extended that on an international basis and have been doing work on international women in law now over those 5 years to be able to make comparisons as well. So our latest reports are on Mexico, Guatemala, and Catalonia. And it is so interesting to see that the same aspects of discrimination exist, and the same ideas are being shared now for how to make change. And it's been 100 years more, just more than 100 years since we had the first female lawyer in the Law Society of England and Wales. And it's taken a long time even, to make change, that we now have our president, Stephanie, our first woman who is a woman of color is president of the Law Society. We're so very proud, and she has been achieving change, and we need role models. So this changing culture is really helped by role models at the leadership of the profession. And the other thing that we would see in culture is that social media helps as well. I know it's also has its very negative effects as well, but we can use the positive aspects of social media to share what is good and works well, and to share and congratulate role models who are achieving change.
Thank you. On that note, I think Andrea Barbarino's question, which is a participant, goes is like a puzzle coming to conclusion. She is asking whether social media, whether the Law Society should take any position in the event of posts on social media if these display evidently sexist opinions. So I think the question is to you, Sarah.
That's a very good question. We've just been looking at this because our Solicitors Regulatory Authority, which is different from the Law Society, but do the regulation of our body and have the Solicitors Disciplinary Tribunal, and looking at behaviour which has verging on the criminal, for example, sexual harassment or worse, should it be a matter for the Solicitors Disciplinary Tribunal? And we actually have been saying what is more important is that we get the culture change, exactly we've been talking about now. So if somebody posts a remark, it should be called out immediately to say this is not acceptable, this is inappropriate for a lawyer. We would not say that the more, like being dismissed from the profession or dismissed from your workplace, we would say that you confront, you say it's unacceptable, and you seek to change what has in the past been all too acceptable, because we're now stepping on to a new platform.
So I do understand that the bar has a very strong say, in creating culture, actually.
And can I add that we've had a couple of cases in our disciplinary system in Norway regarding behavior on social media. And so far, I think no lawyer has lost the license due to sort of harassment in social media. But we had one case where a lawyer sent SMS messages to a client with sexual harassment type of messages, and the lawyer didn't lose the license, but did get I don't know what the English word would say, but I mean he did get a fine in our disciplinary system for those messages to a client.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Extremely important. Thank you. Besides the congratulatory remarks from many of our participants, I believe that this is the time to thank you again. And Georgia, is there anything else that we would want to discuss with our participants?
I actually have one more question, which is really, is torturing me lately, together with my team members at the committee. It's about the mechanism, the reporting mechanism for incidents inside a law firm in the working environment. How do you treat this in your own bar associations? Sarah, yes, please.
I think it's really important that there is a clear policy inside, and this is what our guidance says. The firm must have a clear policy. It must ensure that anybody reporting does not suffer victimization or bullying or demotion because they've reported sexual harassment, for example. And the firm needs to offer, needs not just to offer, but insist that there is training throughout the firm on this issue, because even, as a junior lawyer making a complaint about sexual harassment, if that is not supported, if the firm does not have as I said, the clear policy and the support for someone making a complaint, then they may as well not have any policies at all, because it is absolutely vital that it is a safe environment to be able to make a complaint.
What if they report to the Bar Association instead, to the manager or the
authority? I think the Solicitors Regulatory Authority would investigate. I'm not sure how it would then, if it was about an individual, and I think that has happened, and we have had fines. But does that change anything within the firm? If we want to ensure that it's safe inside the firm, then the firm themselves must have a really transparent policy that it is safe to make a complaint.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you very much. Meret, please.
Yes, I mean, I think I agree with what Sarah's saying, and we have the same type of rules. But what recently happened in Norway was that we had an event for one of the local bar associations, and one of the women reported sexual harassment. And then we actually realized that we didn't have any guidelines for the bar association itself. So now recently we had those guidelines in place, and because I think that's of course also very important, that I mean that should not happen at any bar association in event that, you know, this was a young woman who was harassed by an older male lawyer, and she then stopped coming to bar association events because she didn't feel safe at all. And that I mean, that is awful, and it shouldn't happen. And I must admit, I was actually quite embarrassed that we didn't have, you know, guidelines for our own events or for, you know, the work at the bar association. So, but now we have that in place.
Okay. Thank you very much, ladies. Thank you very much for your valuable input and for answering all these questions that are now trying to shape our own policies at the Cyprus Bar Association. Georgia, back to you.
I think that we should now wrap it up. Thank you all. And thank you for all the input, all the knowledge and all the professionalism and everything that you have told us. We urge all of you to endorse and enforce the pledge which the Cyprus Bar Association has already set, and take positive action for cultural change in our profession. Thank you, ladies, once again. Meret Smith, Sarah Chandler, Georgia Konstantinou Panayotou, Kulia and Salome, of course, from the Cyprus Bar Association, all the participants, and we look forward to positive change.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.